It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This message is brought to you by Hotels.com. Every day, thousands of people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like on social media. What's a hate like? It's when your friend Kyle posts an envy-worthy vacay photo and you like it, even though you kind of hate it. It's not that you hate Kyle. It's that you hate that he's on an awesome trip while you're sitting in a bathroom stall at work. Don't hate like Kyle's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere. Hotels.com. Be there, get rewarded.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I am your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Thursday to you. Today we are going to continue our expectations series and talk about the Buffalo Bills running back situation, talk about the key players, and of course stack up the Bills running back situation compared to the rivals in the AFC East. Do want to thank Steven Mathis from the Bills Guys podcast. Really enjoyed my discussion with him yesterday on Water Cooler Wednesday. If you missed that, don't go back and listen to that thing. Really enjoyed our conversation, particularly the stuff that we got into about the wide receivers. Also, don't forget about your Twitter Tuesdays. Had a really fun show this past week, but want to make sure we have it again for you this coming Tuesday. So make sure you fill up the Twitter Tuesday show by sending in your Bills takes, items, predictions, whatever you have Bills related, or I guess anything related that you want to hear me talk about. Hit me up on Twitter. It's at the Joe Marino, and the hashtag is Twitter Tuesday. Make sure you hit me with the hashtag. That way I keep everything organized. If you would prefer to send an email, that option is available to you. Many people do that every single week. You can hit me up via email at joe@thedraftnetwork.com. Again, joe@thedraftnetwork.com. All right, let's talk about this Bills running back situation. Last year it wasn't good. Josh Allen, who played in 12 games, was the team's leading rusher, 631 yards. The problem with that is Josh Allen's the quarterback. And LaShawn McCoy played in 14 games, only averaged 3.2 yards per carry, 514 yards rushing on the season. His worst season really for his entire career. Now, I don't think it's that LaShawn McCoy really just completely fell off a cliff last year. I think there were some circumstances that really limited the Bills' rushing attack. First of all, the offensive line. It was not a very good run-blocking unit. There wasn't a lot of space created. You had a rookie quarterback. You had 4 different quarterbacks. You had a situation where defenses basically would dare the Bills to win through the air. And who wouldn't, right? You've got this quartet of Josh Allen, Nate Peterman, Matt Barkley, and Derek Anderson. Well, I'm going to let, if you're going to beat me, if I'm a defense, I'm going to say, if you're going to beat me, you're going to beat me by those guys making throws, and I'm going to take away the rushing attack. And so, the Bills faced a lot of heavy boxes and not a lot of favorable rushing opportunities. Offensive line was poor. LaShawn McCoy was pretty banged up throughout the course of the season. And overall, just a very, especially coming from some years where the Bills were really good at running the football, this past season was just really disappointing to see. Well, the offensive line's been upgraded. Josh Allen should be better. There's better weapons in the passing game. There's new personnel in the backfield, and so there's a reason to believe that this team could take a turn here for the positive in 2019 when it comes to the running back situation. Let's start off with LaShawn McCoy. I kind of already got into the talking points with him, but I'm expecting him to bounce back. It's important for him to get those 12,000 yards for his career. I like that he has Frank Gore with him. I think that'll be an iron sharpens iron type situation, and LaShawn McCoy will be better because Frank Gore is on the roster. Maybe that eats away at some of the volume of carries that you get from LaShawn McCoy because Frank Gore is going to eat into that a little bit. But I think you get a better LaShawn McCoy in the touches that he has. And so I'm optimistic that he'll turn the corner. I'm not going to project a 1,000-yard season or anything like that. But I think when it's all said and done, the Bills will be happy that LaShawn McCoy was part of the mix in 2019. Now, Frank Gore is the pickup that I don't think gets enough praise. I'm really excited about Frank Gore on this football team. I know that he's an older guy. What is he, 36 years old? And look, I think he's going to have a good year. He's coming off one of the best seasons of his career, maybe not in terms of raw statistical data in terms of rushing yards, but in terms of yards on average after contact. He had 3.29 yards after contact last year. That's the most that he's had in a season since his rookie year in 2006. He is the high in terms of PFF grades running the football. It's the highest season that he's ever had in 2018 for the Miami Dolphins behind a bad offensive line. I'm very optimistic about what Frank Gore can do for the Bills. Number one, the leadership factor is really big. Number two, he's still a really good running back. He gives you some power components that you do not get in LaShawn McCoy. They're a good complementary duo, despite them both being pretty old guys. But they have complementary skill sets. They work together well in concert. And you also get a very good pass blocker in Frank Gore. So I think there's a number of reasons to be excited about this signing for Frank Gore and the role that he could play for the Bills offense in 2019. Here's the deal. I think this is an underrated component when talking about this backfield duo of McCoy and Gore and them being older guys. I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it. Josh Allen is entering year 2 of his career as an NFL starting quarterback. The Bills' running back situation in 2020 will need to be completely overhauled. It will not be Gore and McCoy. I don't think either one will be on the roster in 2020. But you have Josh Allen in the backfield with veterans around him in the backfield. Guys that are going to line up where they're supposed to be. They're going to hit the holes they're supposed to hit. They're going to pass block like they're supposed to. And Josh Allen doesn't have to think about those things. And in year 2, that's a good thing. In year 3, Josh Allen will be much better equipped to handle some inexperience in the backfield along with him. But that's for year 3. For year 2, he's got McCoy and Gore. And I like that idea. The Bills, maybe the Bills running back tandem in 2020 is Devin Singletary and TJ Yeldon. Maybe it's another lead back that they add at some point. Who knows? But whoever it is, their acclimation to the offense will be much more favorable for them and Josh Allen in 2020. I like the idea of Josh Allen having these veterans with him in the backfield. And Frank Gore might be 36, but he can still play. Now let's move on to Devin Singletary, the Bills' 3rd-round pick. A pretty debated situation with him being added to the mix. Really exciting game tape at Florida Atlantic. Really good vision, really good contact balance. Two really important traits for NFL running backs. You get those from Devin Singletary. Now, you get those from him against, not even Power 5 competition. When he played Power 5 competition, the results weren't as good. And I get that, he's a good football player, but, it's the offensive line going against better talent, and that certainly plays into things. But I think we have a lot to learn about Devin Singletary because for as elusive as he is, for as good as his vision is, as good as contact balance is, he's kind of a smaller back that doesn't have great athleticism. So his physical traits are pretty underwhelming. And so the Bills kind of need to take this season to learn if Devin Singletary can be the guy or be one of the top 2 guys in 2020 and beyond, because I think he has to prove that his style is going to work in the NFL. And he run a ton of zone, a lot of outside zone at Florida Atlantic. And, the types of carries he's going to be tasked with handling in the NFL will be very different. And I think there is an acclimation ahead for Devin Singletary, of course, for any rookie. But for a guy that is coming from an outside zone system to the NFL, coming from a group of 5 team, there's a big jump ahead. And it's all kind of the wet blanket over the whole discussion with Devin Singletary is that his physical gifts aren't very good. They're very poor. And so we need to find out if this guy can get the job done in the NFL. And we'll find out. I think he should get a ton of carries in preseason, and I think you have to find ways to get him the football at times in the regular season, even though you have Gore and McCoy, because you need to see if this kid, if it's going to translate. And we need to see it. That's all I'll leave that at. Also, I want to see him catch the football, right? He was very limited with his receiving production at Florida Atlantic. It declined every year, caught less than 10 passes his final season. And so I think the Bills are going to value a running back that can catch the football, and we need to see if Devin Singletary can do that. So this is a big year for Devin Singletary to prove some things, and he's not necessarily – I don't think he's going to get a ton of chances to do that. So I'm not trying to sit here and say that Devin Singletary can't be a productive back in the NFL. I'm just saying there's a lot to prove, and we need to find out this year because the Bills are either going to roll with Devin Singletary in 2020 as one of the top two backs, or the entire position group potentially has to be overhauled, and he'll just be the third back or a part of the mix. Let's talk about TJ Yeldon. This is a player that I've kind of went back and forth on a bit since he joined the team. And on one hand, I find it hard to believe that the Bills will keep 4 running backs, especially if they don't play special teams. You're not going to get special teams production out of Gore and McCoy. Singletary, I mean, that's a complete guess. And TJ Yeldon hasn't been a special teams contributor so far in his career. And he's a guy that has some versatility as a runner and receiver out of the backfield. But here's the deal with TJ Yeldon. He signed a 2-year deal. But I think you can sign TJ Yeldon or a similar player like him every single offseason. There's always a TJ Yeldon or multiple TJ Yeldons available in free agency. And I don't think you can stash him for 2020 at the expense of not getting a guy that can help you on special teams. And that's where Sonoris Perry comes into play, a guy with a proven track record of contributing on special teams that exists on this roster, that while he may not help you from scrimmage, he helps you on special teams, which is probably more than TJ Yeldon can do in this season. I don't think you can stash TJ Yeldon at the expense of not carrying a player that can help you on special teams like Perry can, and that's why they added him to this roster. So if you can get something from scrimmage if you have to, but get a good special teams player, his value in 2019 is more valuable than stashing TJ Yeldon for 2020, because I think you can sign TJ Yeldon every single year. Before we move on, I want to talk about sex. Good sex. Remember the days when you were always ready to go? Now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up. BlueChew.com. That's blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach, and since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill, so you can be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Now, this just isn't for guys who can't perform. It's for any guy who wants extra function to enhance their performance in the bedroom. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor's visits, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code LOCKEDON. Just pay $5 shipping. Again, that's BLUE Chew.com, promo code LOCKEDON to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and I thank them for sponsoring this podcast. When looking over the rest of the options for the Bills at running back, you have Christian Wade's the rugby player that they signed. He'll be stashed on the practice squad and not even take up one of the spots allocated. They get an exemption for him, so I'm not expecting much. I'll be really anxious to see what he does in preseason, but I'm not expecting him to make the roster. You've got Marcus Murphy, who has had some moments as a backup coming in spot duty, but I don't think he has a clear path to the roster. I don't expect him to make the team. And then you have Patrick DeMarco, the fullback, who, look, he played all the special teams last year. He fills a leadership role. I think he's a favorite of Sean McDermott. He was a team captain. The Bills do use a fullback some on offense. I think it was about, somewhere like 10, 12% of the time last year. And so they're going to need somebody to do that. And so if you keep Sonoris Perry as a special teams guy, Maybe it doesn't make sense to keep Patrick DeMarco, but I think there's a course for Patrick DeMarco to make this team if the Bills are willing to keep 5 at the position. And so, look, I think it's going to be interesting to see what this depth chart looks like when the Bills' final cuts are done. I think you have Locks and Gore, McCoy, and Singletary, and then I think you're probably going to get 2 of either Perry, Yeldon, DeMarco, maybe I think you're going to get 2 more. I think the Bills will keep 4 or 5. And it's interesting, but I think that we don't need to be convinced that TJ Yeldon makes this football team. Now, let's talk about where the Bills running back situation stacks up in comparison to the rest of the AFC East. I think the best running back situation in the AFC East is the New England Patriots. Sony Michel, their first-round pick from 2018. James White, who is a dynamic receiving threat. Rex Burkhead, who has some versatility, plays special teams as well. Damian Harris was their third-round pick out of Alabama. He's a very quality player. I think at a minimum he'll be a reliable runner that does some power stuff for them and has a little bit of juice, catches the football well, pass blocks. And so they're deep, they're talented, they have complementary skill sets. This is overall the best running back situation in the AFC East, in my opinion. The Jets, I'm going to put them at number 2 because Le'Veon Bell is the best running back in the AFC East. I don't know that they have the depth that's all that exciting. Ty Montgomery, Bilal Powell, Elijah McGuire are their backups, so I really, you don't get much excited about much after Bell, but Bell is one of the best backs in the league. Now, one thing I will say about Le'Veon Bell when it comes to him playing in New York is that Pittsburgh, where he was, had like the best offensive line in football, like certainly a top 5 unit while Bell has been there. And so I don't think the Jets have anything close to what what Pittsburgh had at the offensive line. And you think about Le'Veon Bell, he's patented for his patient style of running. And so will he be as effective stylistically with the Jets as he was with Pittsburgh with a much lesser offensive line? I think that's something that remains to be seen. His value to me really comes as a receiving threat for Sam Darnold, who, Sam Darnold's one of those guys who likes to find completions. Le'Veon Bell's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. And I think that is going to make him really productive. I just don't know that he'll have the same success running the football as we saw in Pittsburgh with the Jets. Had the Bills at number 3. Look, I think that's a fair place to put them. I don't think they're nearly as good as the Patriots at running back. They don't have a back that is 1-for-1, even close to Le'Veon Bell. And I think the Bills are appropriately slotted at number 3. At number 4, the Miami Dolphins. Kenyon Drake never really has been the focal point of a rushing attack. He'll have a bigger load this year with Frank Gore no longer in the mix. They took Kalen Ballage out of Arizona State in the 4th round of 2018. He's a very physically gifted runner, questionable vision. He'll get a chance to catch the football a little bit. He has good hands. He's actually a good receiver. Vision is very questionable. So he'll get a chance to prove if he can be part of the mix moving forward. They drafted Myles Gaskin out of Washington in the 7th round. Really good college football player, like the most productive runner ever in the history of Washington. Has a lot of a tread on his tires, and he's a guy that doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of great physical traits, so probably a 3rd or 4th running back ideally. So a lot of question marks with the Dolphins running back situation, as is the case with a lot of their roster. Kenyon Drake, he runs really hard. He catches the football well. I just don't know that you're going to lean on him as your bell cow or even your lead back, because he's very much unproven, and he doesn't necessarily have a great offensive line at his disposal. So I don't think it's a total lost cause for Miami at running back. I just think that it's definitely clearly the least desirable situation of any team in the AFC East. So there you have it. Bills' expectations at running back. Talked about each player for Buffalo and how I think they'll fit into the mix in 2019. ranked the AFC East. Would love to hear your feedback. If you disagree with something that I said or agree with something I said, hit me up on Twitter at the Joe Marino. Kindly ask you to share, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. All that stuff is always so helpful in growing and building this podcast, which I greatly, greatly appreciate. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On Bills, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's Locked On podcast. I want to remind you, your smart speaker can play a Locked On podcast. Just tell your smart speaker, play podcast, and the name of your podcast. I could show you exactly how right now, but then Alexa or Google's likely to do it. So I'll just explain. Say, whoever you're talking to or whatever you're talking to, play podcast Locked On blank. Have a great day.